like for myself. I was still sad for everything around me, but I was like feeling good again. I was like, I'm gonna be a mom. And I went and bought a lot of money worth of baby stuff, like immediately. And Chris was like, what'd you do today? I was like, I spent a lot. And he was like how much? I was like, few hundred. And he was like, on what? And I was like, gender neutral baby things. And he was like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, do more of that. And I was like, okay, cool. So like, I mean, he was like so supportive, like, do whatever you want, get all the baby things. And he's like, but you know my mom's gonna want to buy stuff.
Yeah.
So don't go too crazy because she's gonna get excited. And I was like, true. She's gonna be the ultimate grandma. And so, I mean, things were starting to look up again. Like, we were happy. We were texting each other like, I want a boy. And I was like, oh, I want a girl. And we were thinking of names. And then I started like panicking, like, oh my God, we don't live in a house big enough for a baby. What do we do? And I was like, we gotta buy a house. So then I started looking at houses. Then I was like, oh, do I stay home? Do I go to work? Do we pay for daycare? Do I? And he was like, I would like you to not work. And I was like, but how are we gonna have money? He's like, we'll make it work. Like, I want you to be there. Like, you know, it's not like, you know, I think women are supposed to be, you know, at home. He's like, I just personally don't want a stranger to raise our child.
Yeah.
And I was like, fair. Because his mom was a single mom and she had to do daycare. And that's something that she's like told me several times. Like, I always hated that I missed so much of his life. So many milestones, so many, you know, oh, he started crawling and I wasn't there. And she was like, if you can make it work, you know, like, that's the ideal thing. Like, so I was like, all right, if that's what he wants, then we'll budget. I'll make it happen. So things were good. We were...
So this was like a happy 1 to 3 weeks-ish? 1 week.
Yeah.
Like just a bubble of awesome...
Yeah, like we went from being like husband and wife to like mom and dad.
Yeah.
I was like, we're new people. Yeah, we got 1 week together as parents. And then Chris, you know, he was killed in a suicide bombing.
Yeah.
So I always tell people, like, I only got like 1 week. That was...
So you got that 1 week to share what you guys were planning on sharing.
Yeah.
For a long time.
And if I had known, like, it was just going to be 1 week, like, I would have talked about better things. I wouldn't have stressed him about, like, we got to have a house. Like, what are we going to do? Like, I would have stopped talking about money. I would have just only asked him, like, what do you want? You know,
Right.
What names do you like?
Yeah.
I would have asked more of his opinion, but I was so worried about finances and normal things.
Yeah, the things you should have been worried about.
That I just, like, lost sight of, like, we should be talking about, like, our dreams and aspirations and what we want for our children. And, you know, there was a little bit of that, but it was mostly just him checking in on me. And I had, like, 1 blood test done at, like, at the doctor's office, and they confirmed, like, yeah, you're pregnant for sure. And that was all I really got. And
so the incident happens, right, with Chris, and August 2nd, 2017, right? Mm-hmm. How long before you found out?
What do you mean, like?
Did you find out that day?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
That was fast.
Mm-hmm.
And how did you find out?
The worst story ever. I was texting him, and you know, he warned me, like, don't set a routine.
Yeah.
Don't do it. Don't expect me to talk to you at a certain time every day. And I did, and I was like, hey, love you, what are you doing? Here's a house. Here's another house. Here's a house. Here's another house. What about this house? I called about this house. Hello? You're not answering. Hello? And, I mean, it's just, like, the worst. I just kept texting. And the more I text, the more upset I got. So I was at work, and they're like, get off your phone. I'm like, yeah, sure. And I was just texting. Hello, why aren't you answering? You should be answering. It's time for you to be, like, eating. Where are you? Well, okay, maybe he's on a mission you didn't tell me about, or you didn't know about. And I was having a bad day already from something different. And, like, my good girlfriend at work, I was like, will you take me to lunch today? I don't feel good. Like, I'm mentally, like, not okay. She was the only person that I confided in that was pregnant. Like, the only person. Because there were, like, 3 other pregnant girls at our job. And everybody was like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
Like, is there something in the water here? And I was like, psst, I'm pregnant too. And she was like, no. And I was like, yes. Don't tell me about it though. She was like, okay, cool. So I was like, hey, I don't feel good. Will you take me to lunch? And she was like, yeah, sure. So we go to lunch together. And I was telling her, like, on the way there, I'm like, I don't feel like things are okay with Chris. She was like, you're just worrying about me. Yeah. Everybody knows I have bad anxiety. I worry a lot. So she was like, no, you're fine. So it goes like a little sandwich shop that's like my favorite. And I was in line and I ordered my food and I went and sat down. And I had like American Military News app on my phone.
Mm-hmm.
And it like lit up. 2 soldiers killed in Kandahar, Afghanistan. And I just like threw my phone down. I was like, I gotta go. And she was like, no, our food's not out. And I was like, I have to leave. Like, I'm gonna freak out in public and that's humiliating. Like, I gotta go. I'm going to have a panic attack. And she was like, you're fine, chill out, what's wrong? And I was like, look at this. And she's like, okay, that's okay. Like, that, so what? That doesn't mean Chris, you know? And I was like, it's Chris. Well, I know it's Chris. And she was like, no, it's not. You're being irrational. I couldn't eat. Like, I thought I was gonna throw up. I was like, you gotta take me back to work. So she takes me back to work. I go to my manager. At this point, they've seen me, like, freak out twice. I'm in there, mascara streaming down my face, pacing. Like, you gotta send me home. And she's like, what is wrong with you? I'm like, 2 soldiers were killed at Chris's base. Like, it's Chris, I know it's Chris, I feel it, it's Chris. And she's like, you're like crazy. Like, she didn't say it, I could see it. She's like, he's fine, like, you're overreacting. Don't they have to turn off all their phones when something like this happens, like a blackout? And I was like, yeah. She's like, so isn't that most likely what's happening? And I was like, no, it's Chris. Feel it. And like, a lot of people, like, I know don't believe me about that, but I was just like, in my gut, I was like, it's Chris. Like, I could sense like something in the world
changed,
was like wrong to me.
For sure.
And she was like, I can't send you home, like, driving like this. Like, you're a wreck. Like, you're a mess, like, hysterical.
Right.
And I was like, I'm pregnant. And she was like, what? And I was like, I'm pregnant. You've got to send me home. I'm terrified that they're going to show up and notify me at work. I don't know how this works.
Yeah.
I think they might come here. And for me, that's embarrassing. I don't want people to see that moment. And she was like, oh, my God, Brittany. So she sent me home. And I, like, prayed or yelled. I don't know what you call it. But, like, I just, like, yelled the whole way home at the universe, at God, at something. Like, please let him be okay. He better be okay. Like, he has to be okay. Please don't let it be Chris. Please don't let it be Chris. Please tell me it's not Chris.
Yeah.
And I got home, and I started, like, harassing my FRG. Like, where is Chris? And they were like, we don't know any names. Like, you know, family members have to be notified first. If you haven't been contacted, like, you know, don't worry. And I was like, it's Chris. Why isn't anyone listening to me? Like, I'm not crazy, even though I'm coming across that way. So I started just harassing everyone. And I just, like, kept calling people over and over and over for, like, a really long time. And what had happened was one of Chris's papers wasn't updated correctly. I don't know who that fell on. It went to my old address.
Oh.
They didn't have my new address, so it took a little longer to get to me. So I'm just, like, pacing in my yard, just calling people, screaming at them, just texting people that aren't even with him on deployment, just, like, people that knew him. Like, I don't know what I was thinking. And I called my girlfriend back at work, and I was like, I don't know what to do. And she was, like, trying to talk me down. And I just, like, looked up, and there's, like, this, like, pale blue little Toyota, like, pulling up in my yard. It had military plates on the front. And I was like, I gotta go. And so I hung up the phone. And these 2 soldiers got out in their blues. And I was like, what took you so long? Like, I was so pissed. Like, all of a sudden the tears just dried up, and I was furious. Because I so badly wanted someone to not, you know, to be like, it's not Chris.
Right.
I wanted someone to prove me wrong. Even though I felt it and knew it, I was still hoping that I was going to look like a crazy person and the FRG was just going to block me later, you know? Like, don't talk to that girl anymore. But when someone actually, like, stepped out of the car, I just, like, hung up the phone. I was like, I want you to leave my property. And he was like, like, pulled out a piece of paper and he was, like, shaking. Pretty sure it was, like, his first notification. He had a very distinct accent. He was like, are you the wife of Specialist Christopher Harris? And I just, like, blacked out after that. Like, I don't remember anything else he said. Nothing. I just stood there, just, like, zoned out. Like, is this really happening to me right now? And he was just talking. I was like, get me an ambulance. And he was like, what? I was like, I am pregnant and I'm scared. And he was like, what? And he like started flipping through his paper, and I was like, no one knows. Can you just get me an ambulance to sedate me? Like, I'm gonna freak out. So they called an ambulance, and then the ambulance guy, or the EMT, he was like, do you have like an uncle or grandpa or something that lives here? And I was like, my grandpa owns the property. He passed away just a few months ago. He's like, yeah, I came to that call. I thought this house looked familiar. I was like, what, really? Right now? Like, I was just so devastated. And I just felt like, the universe just like kept kicking me while I was down. Every time I tried to get back up, just kicked me down again. So they told me, like, we can't give you anything. You're pregnant. We can't sedate you. We can't help you. You're just gonna have to, like, handle it. And I was like, well, F you too, like, thanks for the help. So I'm just kind of standing there, like, what do I do? And they're like, well, what do you want to do? I was like, I don't know. Yeah, don't you have, like, a next step? Like, is there somewhere I go? Like, you don't just notify me and leave, right?
Did they explain the details of the event? Or did you figure that out later, like during the investigation and all those things?
If they did say it, I don't remember.
No.
I wasn't listening to them. I got obviously more details as it went on,
Yeah.
but if they did, I don't know.
No. So Chris, just so that people understand, Chris was he was picking up the rear on a convoy, a NATO convoy transporting a few trucks, I'm assuming, right? Because it would be the front and then the rear, and he was towards the rear, and there was information about a white Camry. Is that the vehicle? Something like that?
Camry.
Or similar. Having been weighed down, having been observed with something suspicious enough that drew attention, that somebody knew that it was possible that this vehicle was going to intercept one of the convoys. And so that's what happened. A vehicle-borne IED pulled up alongside of Chris's vehicle, killing him and his friend Jonathan. So 2 soldiers were killed in that event, and I know we talked about it. It was frustrating, right? Because there was information about these things that later on led to change things, but it was a little late for your family.
Why didn't you take that tip? Like, someone called that in. Like, where did that information go? Like, someone didn't just be like, okay, don't care.
No.
I mean, that's essentially what happened.
Yeah.
Like, someone calls you in and gives you a tip, like, hey, there's a suspiciously weighed down vehicle. Like, you don't think that's important?
Right.
And, like, you guys have a routine every day on the same road at the same time, and no one took that serious.
Yeah.
It was just a slap in the face. I was like, you should have done better. You should have known better.
Yeah. Well, like I said, and I'm not making an excuse for other corporations or entities that work outside of the military itself, because we do try to break things up. We do try to have no set schedules, and we go when we go, and it's just different times, different days. But when you fuse in corporations or entities, they want to work on their schedule. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes we're stuck accommodating, and I think that's what one of these situations had become. Which is unfortunate. But so you got the initial news, you got some updates. Obviously you're upset and things are very different now. How was that process? So from the day that they came to the house and then the more information as it started coming out, how long was that process before, like, you now know everything about everything?
Well, so after, I'm just like trying to go like timeline here. Like, while they're at my house, his mom texts me, "Have you heard from Chris today?" She had not been notified. I don't know how it was supposed to be planned out. I have no idea. I made them drive me to her house. I'm like, you're gonna notify this woman in front of me. It's gonna be done right, Huge mistake. Don't know why. I thought that would be a good idea. I was glad to be there for her, but it was the worst thing. Worse than my own notification. Times 100. Mm-hmm. See someone find out that their child died.
Yeah.
Worst thing I've ever experienced. Can't even imagine being in her shoes. Like, she was. I wrote like a blog about it. I was like, there's the sound that came from her. The only way I can describe it is like the sound that you hear like animals like in nature when they're separated from their baby, like just a wailing.
Yeah.
I mean, it was awful.
I mean, it's some pain that is
nothing I would ever
Yeah.
want to know and can't imagine.
Right.
So then I stayed with her that night. The next morning, my casualty affairs officer showed up.
Mhm.
Super awesome guy. Love him. Love his family. They're great people. Still stay in contact with them. He showed up. Was like, we gotta start paperwork. But we're only gonna do a little bit because tomorrow you're going to Dover. So I need all your information and I need you to start getting prepared for that. And I was like, what? Like, you're going to Dover to bring him home. And so there was still like a disconnect kind of information. Like I want to say at this point I knew that it had been a bombing. I didn't know a lot of details, and if people were giving them to me, I was just so zoned out. Like I didn't want to know.
It's like a haze, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of information and days that I'm just like, I don't know. I don't remember that at all. So they were like, hey, get your everything in order. You're leaving in the morning, like 6 in the morning. I'm going to Dover. I was like, okay. I was wearing Chris's pajamas, like sleeping in his bed at his parents', just crying. And I was like, well, I don't have a dress. So I went into town. My friend drove me into town. I still hadn't brushed my hair. I was still wearing his pajamas and flip flops and oversized. Walked into this clothing store and I was like, I need a dress. And the manager recognized me and she was like, what do you need? Anything you need? And I was like, I need a black dress. And she sent all of her associates through the whole store and picked up every black dress that she could find and brought it back. And I was like, I like this one, but I can't afford that. I like that style though. She was like, it's on sale today. Don't worry about it. I was like, you don't have to do that. She was like, it's on sale. Gave it to me almost for free.
Yeah.
And so I went to Dover, and that was just a entirely crazy experience in itself. The Fisher House there, immaculate. It was so crazy. The refrigerator, I remember, is measured, how far each drink is away from the next.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
perfect. Every time I walked in a room, someone saluted me, opened doors for me. They treated me like royalty. And we sat in a room alone for a long time. And then we went and Vice President Pence was there and some other really important people. And I thought they were going to shake our hands and leave. And they were like,
Yeah.
tell me about Chris. And I was like, oh. And I sat down and talked to all these generals and stuff. And I was telling them all about Chris. And there was he actually ended up being the general that gave my flag to me at the funeral, and he was there, and I was like, Chris did a little bit of modeling before the Army. He was like, no, he was an infantryman at all times. I was like, oh, okay, never mind. He was funny, though. But I want to say it was after we came back from Dover that paperwork started actually happening. They didn't want to start giving you a lot of information right off the bat. It's emotional.
To go back to the meeting with the generals and everybody there and talking to you, did they show or did you feel that sense of appreciation? I mean, your family gave one of the greatest sacrifices for our country. Did it feel that? Did you feel it?
Yeah.
I mean, there's no true way to show appreciation for a loss of life, but did that vibe come off?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone. People opening the doors. It's they almost kind of bowed.
Yeah.
I mean, there was so much attention to detail. And then there's the volunteers that work there that hand make teddy bears for kids and stuff.
Yeah.
They were like, you're pregnant, take a teddy bear. Take this. We hand make all this stuff. It's for you. We want you to have this.
Yeah.
Do you need anything? I mean, constantly checking on you. And then when you start meeting the important people, the Secret Service comes in, scans the room. I was like, and my casualty officer was like, that's Secret Service. I was like, that's the Secret Service. He's like, if you're impressed by that, wait till you see who comes in next. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is real.
Yeah.
These people are really showing up for Chris, and Jonathan, and their, Jonathan's family was there too. And we were kind of in a room, but a little divided from each other, separate families. And I mean, everybody was just so, when I talked, they listened. They weren't just shaking my hand and leaving. They were listening to every word I had to say. They were very every word that was coming across. They were like, oh, okay, and what else? It was a real conversation, not just we're here to shake your hand. I felt like they listened to me and they genuinely cared, and the Secretary of the Army, maybe. I don't remember now. But he like shook my hand, slipped a coin
Nice.
into my hand, and I showed my cabinet officer. I was like, "You think I'll ever have to pay for drinks again?" He's like, "No."
Never.
But everybody was really kind to me. Like, if you need anything, let us know. And I was like, okay. And I went back to my room afterwards, and I a couple of guys had called me from Afghanistan. They were like, "How are you? Where are you? What are you doing?" And I was like, I'm at Dover right now. I was like, I just met the vice president. He said if I ever needed anything, let him know. I was like, we'll see. And for Chris's funeral, I actually wanted 2 specific soldiers to come home. And they originally told me that could happen. And then they came to the house and said, "No, ma'am, you cannot have them." And I was like, "You told me I could." And they were like, "We can't make it happen. It's just not happening. They're deployed. It's too soon. No.
Yeah.
Pick someone on the rear." And I was like, "No, I want them." And my casualty officer was like, "Miss Harris, don't you have a congressman you're close to?" I was like, "Yeah, he's my friend. Like, I know him." He was like, "Why don't you contact him?"
Yeah.
And wink, wink. And I was like, "Why?" I didn't catch on. I was like,
Yeah.
"Why?" He's like, "Just call him." And so I did. And he like pushed it up back to Pence.
Yeah.
And he like signed off on it. And in the middle of the night, they ripped them out of their beds and they were like, "Get on a plane now."
Yeah.
And they were like freaking out because they didn't know what was going on. They were like terrified they were like in trouble or something. They sent him home for the funeral to be with me. And that was so like when he said like, "If you need anything," like
He made it
actually
happen.
meant it. And I was like,
That's a
wow,
big deal.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like I thought that was just an empty, generic thing that people say. Like, if you need anything, I'm here for you.
No,
Yeah, because you hear it constantly.
for sure.
But
to see it executed,
in it,
yeah.
I was like, that feels good. Like, that feels like you care and, Chris mattered and you're doing something to help his family out. Like, it was a good feeling.
So that whole process, right? And I know you had mentioned like they had asked you if you wanted to receive anything, because a blast, especially a large blast, not a lot of things are left usually. So what did they give you as far as items that belong to Chris?
Nothing.
They couldn't give you anything.
No, I was pretty upset about that. I had sent over like a little Cookie Monster, and I was like, take it with you, and like send me pictures of it in different places. Like, it'll be cute.
Yeah.
And when his belongings finally came home, I was like, where's the Cookie Monster? Like, I wanted to give it to our baby. And they were like, nothing. Mm-mm. Like, if he had it on him that day, he didn't get it.
Yeah, there's
like,
usually
oh.
nothing.
And, when I went to cut off his phone, I won't name the company, but I went to cut off, like, everything and, like, transfer everything just into my name. And they were like, well, his phone's being leased. Can you get it back? And I was like, get it back? And they're like, otherwise we're going to have to charge you. I was like, you're going to charge me for his phone? It doesn't exist anymore. Like, it was on him.
Yeah.
In an explode. It does not exist. And they're like, ooh, and then we're going to have to charge you. And I was, like, in the store screaming. Like, I was so emotional. I was like, how dare you? Like, that's disgusting.
Yeah.
I don't have this phone.
Yeah.
And I was on the phone with, like, their corporate office. So, like, it wasn't the woman in front of me, but I was in the store, like, losing it. And she was like, did they just ask you for the phone back? And I was like, yeah. She's like, I'm sorry. Like,
Yeah.
I can't believe that. And I was like, and then they were like, well, like, and also you're no longer, like, an active duty military family, so we have to take that discount off.
Wow.
I was like, you're garbage. Like, you guys suck. Like, I was so upset. And I was like, it's just, like, such a little thing. Let me keep my discount. Like, my husband just died. Like,
You're like, fuck a discount.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like, what is wrong with you? Like, I don't have the phone. Like, the phone literally doesn't exist.
Right.
They charged it to his account and just separated our accounts.
Wow.
I mean, yeah, they still charged it.
Wow.
I was like, that's awful. Like, you should be ashamed of yourselves. Like, as much money as I know you're making,
Yeah.
like, come on.
That's crazy.
It was awful.
You're going to have to tell me offline.
Yeah.
All right, so I know not to do business with them. Okay. So is it still going on, like the process of the investigations and anything, or is it closed now?
It's closed.
Is it?
Yeah, it took a year.
A whole year?
Mm-hmm.
So you were still getting like information as far as like what they're finding,
No.
who's involved? Well, not now, like that
No.
whole year, nothing?
No, nothing.
Wow.
Mm-mm. It was just like a year. I was like, when is this gonna be closed? Like, do you guys know I still exist? And they're like, yeah. I was like, is it over? And they're like, Like, what more could you need to like
Yeah.
investigate? Like, it took a long time. I don't know why it took so long. Even, my casualty officer was like, this is unusually long.
Yeah.
Yeah, like there was an enormous amount of paperwork.
Well, I wonder if there wasn't that post-investigation because of the information about the car.
Maybe.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where...
I mean, I'm sure there was something that I wasn't told.
Yeah.
But it took a long time, and when it finally did close, there was a little bit of closure finally. Angry, with the information they gave me, like, oh, there was a tip, and then we had a routine, and then we did these things, and now we've changed it all, and now it's better for everyone else. And I was like,
I wish it would have been before.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that now, I guess. But for the first few months, like, I had to go to Fort Bragg, like, almost every day. Like, my casualty officer was so good. He knew I was pregnant, and he didn't have to take me to my OB appointments, and still did. And he would take me on my counseling appointments and sit down. And I would go in there for like 2 hours at a time and just like cry and vent about everything. And he would just sit out there and wait for me.
Wow.
He was so incredibly thoughtful. Like, he would plan all of my appointments around when I needed to eat. He always checked on me, like, do you need to eat? Do you need anything? Are you feeling
Well, I
okay?
remember that because you were saying that you were looking up all the best things to eat for the baby
Yeah.
and making sure that you weren't eating anything out of whack.
Nothing.
Yeah.
He was so incredibly thoughtful. Like, he has his wife, and they had 2 little girls and a little boy. And I mean, he was just such a thoughtful, caring person. I told her, I was like, your husband's awesome. And so he didn't want to make me go every day because it was like an hour drive.
Yeah.
I moved in with Chris's parents, and it was an hour drive from their house to the base. So he was like, I'm not even going to make you go every day. He's like, it's going to take a little longer to finish up, but I don't want to exert you. And I was like, that's fine. What have I got going on? And so like, I'd go like every other day, but it took like 6-7 weeks to finish all the paperwork. And there was always another appointment. There was, Social Security, and now there's
Yeah.
this, and now you have to go to the VA, and then you have to file this paperwork, and then the baby, you're gonna have to do it all over again, and now you've got to go here, and now you got to get your ID changed. You have to turn it in. My military ID was devastating, and I didn't think it would be. I mean, they gave me another one,
Yeah.
but to give up my ID that said like E4 spouse,
Yeah.
I don't know why, it just broke my heart. I was like, I don't want to give it back, and they're like, you have to
Yeah.
get a new one that says a new status. And I was just like, but I want that one. Like, I want to stay that one.
Yeah.
I mean, there was just so much stuff. And, like, the way they explained it to me was, you're essentially retiring him out of the military for
Yeah.
him. And you have to do all his paperwork that he would have had to have done. And I was like, why? Like, can't you do it? Why do I have to do it? So in the midst of all of that paperwork, there was the Army Casualty Affairs office showing up like, hey, we got to plan a funeral too. And I was 25 and pregnant.
Yeah.
And I was like, why do I have to do it? Well, you have to. You're the person that's listed. And so they were like, they were telling me, it was like a piece of paper. And I was sitting at the table with his mom, and I know it's their job, but I was just like, there's got to be a better way to explain this. And they said, this is a piece of paper that we need you to sign that says if there's any remains found that you would or would not like to be notified. And I was like, remains? What do you mean? And they were like, body parts. And his mom like ran from the table.
Wow.
And I was just like, oh my God, like, no, I don't want to know that. Like, no, don't tell us that. I didn't even get the autopsy. I turned it down. I was just like, this is too soon, too much. Like, I haven't even buried him yet, and I don't want to know all these details. And the only thing that I ended up asking a year later at the investigation was, did he feel pain? Because I know it was such a catastrophic event. I just wanted to know, like, because, word got back to me that because it was such a big explosion, because it was such a big fire, that they couldn't get to him very quick. Of course, my mind runs with things like, did Chris get trapped? And, like,
Yeah.
was he alive? Like, did he suffer? And, like, that was my one thing at the end of the investigation. Do you have any questions, Ms. Harris? Like, did he suffer? Because I never saw any other paperwork because I chose not to. And, then, of course, it just started eating away at me. And they were like, no. And, the autopsy report, there's no smoke in his lungs. He died on impact. He was the driver. It hit him first. He was immediately. I was like, okay, that's all I really care about. I don't care about your routine being changed. I don't care about, anonymous tips being taken more seriously. I just wanted to know if he suffered.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much it. And but yeah, so I was trying to plan his funeral, and Chris and I had never talked about a funeral because we were 25.
Yeah.
We didn't think about things like that. Even in my worst, most anxious, crazy moments, I never was like, "Hey, babe."
Yeah, in those 6
why
months
don't
leading up to it, you weren't
how
even.
you want to be
yeah.
buried.
Did you have 2 funerals? Did you have a personal one and a military one, or was it just
I just made it one?
Just one.
Mm-hmm. And that's all I knew to do because he
Yeah,
never
for
told
sure.
me anything. And there were so many people giving me their 2 cents. Put him in Arlington. You put him in Arlington. You want to put him in Arlington? And I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'll put him in Arlington. And then the congressman I told you was friends with, I was also like really close to a lot of people in his office, and one of them, she contacted me and she was like, Arlington's beautiful. It really is. But how often are you going to be there?
Yeah.
And people go have picnics there, and it's a tourist site.
Right.
And you need to think about that. And is his mom going to go there? And I was like, that's too far for her. And I was like, so I put him in a veteran cemetery, like right outside of base at Fort Bragg. So it's 30-minute drive from like where I was living, 45 from his mom. And we go there all the time, like all the time. Oh, holidays, everything, birthdays.
Yeah. I saw your Instagram, and it looks like you guys
We
stop
go there
by
a lot,
yeah.
And now we can take Christian there. And
That's right. Tell us about her, because she's the surviving little one, right?
My wild child.
Yeah, she's a very beautiful little lady.
Do you have enough memory on this to talk about? I could go all day. Oh my God, I adore her. I just absolutely, being a mom is the most fun thing I've ever done. If I had known it would be this much fun, I would have started earlier. It's so much.
Because you had reservations, right?
Oh, yeah.
You're like, I don't want to be a
baby,
mom.
pushing something out of you? No, not so much.
Right.
But oh my God, I love it. And she looks just like him. They're twins. She doesn't look like me at all.
She does look like him.
Someone messaged me, and it's not like the most poetic way to say it, but I think this girl messaged me and said, I'm not trying to be offensive, but it looks like Chris had sex with himself. And I was like, yes, thank you.
He just had strong genes.
The strongest. Like, she got an mosquito allergy from me, and that's about it. Nothing else. And so I was so convinced I was going to have a boy. Well, at first I was like, it's a girl. And then all his buddies were like, boy, it's going to be a boy. I was like, you're right, it's going to be a boy. Like, totally changed my mind. It's going to be a boy. Found out it was going to be a girl. And I was devastated. Cried and cried. Talked to my counselor about it, tried to get over it. And like I said, she was like, why do you want a boy? Do you want a boy or do you want another Chris? And I was like, oh.
Yeah, she touched on that.
Yeah, I was like, I want another Chris. She's like, you can't have another Chris. You can't birth him.
Right.
It doesn't work like that. And who's to even say that if you had a boy, you would even act like him?
Right.
She's like, you might have a girl and act just like, and she was right. She was spot on. It's like being with him all over again. And it's so bizarre because she has mannerisms that are Chris's. And it's like, that's not a genetic thing. Like, how do you know? I don't do those things. Like, for example, like Chris would stick his tongue out when he was thinking or doing something. Like, he was concentrating, he'd always stick his tongue out. And I was like, put your tongue in your mouth. What's wrong with you? She does it too. Like, she'll be concentrating, she just like sticks her tongue out. Like, I don't do that. And I'm like, where is she learning that? It's just crazy. And she's very, we try to use positive words instead of being like, she's stubborn. She's very independent. She's very headstrong. Because I'm like, Christian, you don't do that. And I'll like shake my finger at her. She shakes her finger. You don't do that. I'm like, you don't talk to me like that. You don't talk to me like that. I'm like, who taught you to be like this? You're
she's
so sassy. And like the other day we were driving to the cemetery on the 2nd to visit Chris, and her grandma was riding in the back with her. And I heard her say, like,